Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to the Cognitive Podcast, here for episode 78. I love your comments. I've really appreciated them in the last few weeks, I must say. And you can comment on our blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Or you can comment in the show notes on our group on Ravelry. In the warm thanks department, as last time, I have to thank everybody for your wonderful comments on Eleanor. They were very, very appreciated. I was trying to put a heart on every one of them because there just aren't words. There is no way to describe how terrible the loss feels and how much I appreciate the comments and the likes and all that for the posts. It's still hard without her. I'm just going to say that. However, that's more for the blather, I would say. But thank you to everybody who sent some form of consolation to any of our various places, including my social media. I really, really appreciated it. Thank you also to Chris H., the ongoing loyalist who is keeping us going by providing coffee. I really, really appreciate your generous gift, Chris, and your kind comments about Eleanor, about everything else. I am so grateful that you've been following me all these years. And if I ever get across the puddle again, kids, I have a lot of you to visit. I also want to thank Kath Wood, speaking of going across the pond, and Prairie Poet, who both were talking about hand-spun sweaters. And Prairie Poet, I hope I am an inspiration. I am so glad when I hear that somebody else is making the leap and trying the hand-spun sweaters thing. Kath Wood, apparently you've been doing it forever, and you really have a kind of process now where you're using your own hand-spun. And I thought you were implying that you're not buying mill-spun yarn anymore, that you're really doing everything for your own sweaters. And the one in the picture is beautiful. I love the contrast patch pocket. So, ladies, I am happy to hear from other people doing their own hand-spun sweaters. It's true, I can't even walk in my back bedroom because I've got 2 bins of hand-spun, and I am just fighting not to go in there and do yet another hand-spun sweater. As I talk to you now, I am currently wearing the Feral Easter egg. I can't love this sweater enough. I am so deeply in love with it. It is 58 degrees today, was our high. I don't know why. I think we're getting rain tomorrow. I think we're supposed to get it today, but it's hard to tell right now. The sky's looking pretty clear, but the temperature dropped. And what a delight. What a delight to wear it. And I was still cold in my study today as I worked. I had my heat on and was wearing the Feral Easter egg. It is so beautiful, and it just blows my mind because it's every different shade of pink and red and violet and a little bit of brown that you can imagine, and it's just awesome. Oh, we got some midnight blue there, and the striping just worked out so happily, and I cannot recommend this enough. Again, a simple top-down sweater worked for me. I don't want the pattern to be too fussy because the yarn was fussy. And in places I doubled the yarn. I never did change needle sizes. I stayed to the same size 9 needles, which worked because some of my yarn really was a little on the bulky side, and some of it was more of worsted or Aran weight. And then when I doubled some of it, I was getting pseudo bulky. And so the size 9 needles were a good choice there, that they kind of handle all those sizes of yarn pretty efficiently. And of course, the other thing that worked for me, since I was getting striping, was to have 3 sets of the same size needles, the size 9s. And I had one run through the body, one in each arm, and I was holding the needles together with hair bands so that they didn't come apart, so that none of the stitches slid off. And that sounds very clunky to have, like, if you're working on a sleeve, for example, and you're doing the stripes, and so you're working your way down the body and each sleeve doing the stripes to make them match. And you're thinking, well, here I am swinging this big heavy sweater around in my lap, and on top of it, I've got needles in it. But the needles don't add a lot to it. It's already clumsy. Let's face it, when you're on Sleeve Island, particularly when you're on sleeve number 2, and you're swinging that whole bloomin' sweater around in your lap, look, it's clunky. I mean, there's no great way. One of my friends, Quandam Quadrat, when she does sweaters, the minute she has enough body knitted in to do the arms, she'll do the arms before she does the body, because to her that's less clumsy. I guess. I think no matter how you do it, sweaters always end up clumsy. But having those needles ready to go and not having to continually rethread them as I was doing on the Mad Skills Mammoth sweater makes everything a whole lot easier. It also means that when you finish one sleeve and you just have another sleeve in the body with needles, well, you've got this spare set of size 9 needles. And I use 40 inches because I do all my knitting magic loop. And so there you are with one arm done and spare size 9 40-inch needles. I mean, anything could happen to those needles. You can't just leave them lying around, because what if you get lost or the cat tries to eat them? In the meantime, I am still carrying my COVID information. Why, you might ask? Because COVID is alive and well in Europe, as far as I can tell, and is not going under in China either. I do believe it's coming back. I do believe you need your booster shots. And I do believe I have several patients who are immune compromised and several others who have children who cannot be vaccinated due to age or health. So having said that, I really think you've got to be careful. If you're going into a crowded place, there are immune compromised people. And yes, I've actually heard buttheads say things like, why don't you just stay home if you're sick? How about, because if you've got cancer and you're undergoing chemo and you're going to be locked into your house on top of every other problem you've got, that's not fair, man. That's just wrong. And I'm not going to go into, sure, let's take our 3-year-olds and never let them go outside and meet other people. Sure, let's do that. Whoops, sarcasm. Anyway, I am carrying the COVID information. What is on my hooks and needles? Well, nothing finished right now. Sure, you're thinking, shouldn't Twin Faces brick be finished? No. Why? No arm measurements. So you know what I'm going to do, right? You can tell. You know me well enough to know I'm just going to fake it. I just decided I'm going to look at the measurements for one size bigger than mine. I usually wear a medium or a large in hand-knitted sweaters. And on the brick, I've been negotiating that. I use the large pattern, but I've now been doing decreases down the body because it's a little too large. And the tapering is not my shape. It would have been my shape 20 years ago. So yeah, I negotiate a bit. But at any rate, I'm making myself a large and her a medium, and I think her sleeves will be based on the pattern for the extra large. I always make my sleeves very generous for me because I'm really worried about ripping out an entire sleeve because the upper arm was made too thin, We'll see how that goes. But anyway, you're thinking, why didn't you just finish her brick? Yes, why didn't I? No measurements. Wait, I said that already. I started one arm of it, and I just can't get interested. And at the same time, you remember what I said about I had a spare size 9 needle when I finished? Yeah. Well, of course, when I finished the Feral Easter egg, I actually had 3 size 9 needles, one of which immediately got into Twin Faces brick. But I don't have to stripe her sleeves. And, well, all I can say is there's one size 9 in the left sleeve of her brick, and then I have these 2 other size 9s, 40 inches, wandering around loose. Yeah, you know it. I started another brick. I wanted a very straightforward, fast, easy brick after the work on the hand-spun brick, because the hand-spun brick, of course, takes some work and planning to make sure you've got enough yarn to keep changing up the pattern a little bit, putting the stripes in different places, working on the striping across the arms at the same time you work on the body. It takes a little bit of effort once you get down to the arms and the body and there's going to be striping. And I had this Malabrigo Rios in the colorway Wales Road just waiting to be used, and I knew it was going to be a brick. What can I tell you? I started it. The picture in the show notes is of the new sweater being made in Malabrigo Rios, which is worsted weight and multiple ply. And the colorway is Wales Road. And in that picture, I have just gotten past the place where you separate the arms. As I record this, I'm actually about 40 rows down the body. I think the body is something like 89 rows or 88 rows, something, or 86, something like that. So I'm well down the body because, of course, that's the best part of this type of sweater is the popcorn knitting where you just stocking it your brains out. So I'm just having a good time doing that. So this is the fishy brick I'm talking about. I haven't done anything on the heart scarf or the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, but Memorial Day weekend is coming, and so is my trip to Mammoth, where I plan to just sit on my patio and listen to the birds chirp and knit my brains out. Meanwhile, I don't know yet. We are still on track with the blocks. I think I'm something like 2 blocks over where I should be, which is good. I always try to have 1 or 2 spare blocks for those bad days where I don't feel like doing blocks. And I'm having a good time. I'm currently working my way through Celestial, which is a dark blue. And then some color whose name I don't remember, but is probably called something romantic like red. And that's what it is. So that's all going very nicely. Remember, July 19th will be 200 blocks. I'm very excited. No spinning this week, so let's just boogie on down to the strategy. Well, under the strategy, I left the beautiful diagram for ACT, where you can actually read things on it, because I think it's worth keeping that around. That I'm using that so much in therapy now to talk to patients about what they're trying to achieve in therapy. Using the ACT hexagon is an incredibly easy way to talk to people about your goals when you're doing CogB with them, to focus them on the idea that we're trying to help you to get mindfulness and distance from your thoughts, and we're trying to teach radical acceptance, and everything is in the real time, in the present, in context, and we're talking about the past as a tool to make values. And all of this, of course, leads to committed action to change things, and this gives you psychological flexibility. And that is such a great model. So it is still there, and show it to all your friends and neighbors. In the meantime, though, I'm on the bigger topic of emotional management. Now, in DBT, emotional management is how you live your life so that your mood stays stable. And my son is banging on walls for reasons I don't know. So if you're hearing that in the background, he's about to get in trouble. But one of the things that doesn't get talked about in DBT per se, and should be talked about in therapy all the time, is time management. Why? Because we get an awful lot of people who are disorganized. And because they're disorganized, they get depressed. And disorganization is often one of the major causes behind depression, that people feel like their world is out of control. And you fix it by organizing a little bit at a time. As you can probably guess, this crosses over into the sense of I'm overwhelmed. People come into therapy all the time and just say, I'm overwhelmed. And they start telling you why they're overwhelmed, and you listen and you think, that's actually time management. It's actually time management. You've got to figure out a schedule and you've got to stick to it. And you hear this in parenting all the time. The kids are running wild and the parent feels overwhelmed, and the answer is, look, you have experience and they don't. They just have a lot of emotion to make up for that. So when you're lying in bed, if you can keep your eyes open, and they're asleep an hour before you, you need to lie in bed and think about how do you change their schedules so that you can get breaks or you can reduce the pressure on yourself. How do you let one kid watch TV while you're working with the other kid, or something along those lines? And it gets a lot deeper than that. Mothers pray for the day their kids go off to school. And when they go to nursery school, get like an hour free or 2 hours free, or kindergarten, 3 hours or an afternoon. That's time management. That's the mother saying, I need the school district to forcibly manage my kids' time so that I can have time for myself. There are a lot of challenges. I don't mean to minimize that to parenting. I've been there myself. And there are definitely days where you'd give anything to get away from your kid. What I'm saying is, Often, though, that is time management. Often you need to make a schedule ahead of time and work hard to stay with it. And so not managing your time, not organizing yourself, often makes you feel helpless, often leads to feeling overwhelmed. So it is perfectly normal in therapy to talk about this. I should mention the other topic in emotional management strategies that doesn't get talked about is finances. That people feel like, oh, they can't talk to their therapist about that. Wrong, you can talk to me about just about everything at this point. But again, these are the hidden problems that nobody puts these in their models. If I were to put time management on the ACT hexagon, where would I put it? I would probably put it under present, under staying in the present, or under committed action. It's a bit of a challenge, but there's also overlap in the hexagon, as you know. So how does this happen, and what do you do about it? Well, the key to it is you need several tools. And one is, frankly, for me, a blank book. And I go on and off these schedules. I'm currently struggling to stay on it. Lately, I'm just not as excited about my scheduling as I was, say, 3 months ago. And I go in waves like that. But I keep a lot of blank books around the house. And I'm a big fan of making lists of things I'd like to repair around the house. Things that need to be looked at, managed, evaluated, priced. Things that we need to buy. Little tasks or a room full of tasks. So I might look in the bathroom and say, what do we need to do to this bathroom to improve it? Things like that. I'm a big fan of just writing down your thoughts and making lists. I always have lists of books I want to write. Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, someday. But I always have lists. And so one thing in time management that's critical is being able to jot down your ideas and keep them with you. So when you're more ready to come back to them, you actually aren't losing them. And that's the simplest level of organization. Just carry a notes program on your phone or a blank book and jot things down. Jot down your ideas. And I have a tendency to go through those and draw lines through the ones that later I think are kind of dumb. I'll just put a line through it and say, okay, you can let go of that. But I try to catch any thoughts I have that I think are worth keeping. That actually feeds your creativity. And squashed creativity is a great reason for depression. A lot of people have creative binges and creative urges, and they squash them. And when you do that, that takes out a resource in your mind. That resilience is based on creativity. So you do want to feed your creativity. And there are lots of feelings of success, of trauma reduction, and basic satisfaction that go with doing craft and creative work. So you don't want to squash those things. You want to have your blank book and you want to record those things or doodle those things or make up lists of those things. So tool number one on time management is just having some place to write your ideas down, and later you're probably going to go back and organize them and discard a few. I've been known to rip entire pages out of my blank books going, that's all waste. It doesn't matter. A lot of people just get overwhelmed, and that's because they've lost the idea of little strokes fell great oaks, as Benjamin Franklin said in the 18th century. That if you feel overwhelmed, that's really a time management task much of the time. People say, oh, my schoolwork is too hard, I'm just so overwhelmed, or my family has so many problems, I'm just so overwhelmed. Actually, the reality there is you break everything into little bits and you work on one little bit at a time. So I came home for the quarantine from working in an office, realized the house was kind of a disaster, and was very frustrated about it for a while, and then realized, okay, look, the cobwebs are bugging me the most. If I took a long-handled mop and I just got all the cobwebs on our cathedral ceiling, how long would that take me? And I realized 10 minutes to go around the whole house. And that's where Project Touch Up came from, where I just made a rule that every day I have to do one job that I normally wouldn't think about, and it can't take more than 15 minutes. So I would do things like wash one side of a window, or wash the wooden blinds on one window, or just go get all the spider webs, or clean out a toilet. And that was it. And I really focused on little jobs. I never said things like clean the bathroom, because that took too long. Often I would say rinse out a tub, or wipe down the shelving around the tub, things like that. And that, of course, as I've told you plenty of times, led to many other useful projects. The other big one was Project One a Day, where I was overwhelmed by my clothing closet, so I put a carton in the closet And I had to take one piece of unused clothing out per day and put it in the carton. And then the carton didn't go away. It went in my garage for a month. And if I didn't miss the clothing, then frankly it could go away. Most of the time I'd forgotten about it. That was 5 cartons of clothing cleared out of my closet. So it's these little tiny 15-minute projects. Well, and of course on my to-do list, that's what I loaded up with. I will say something like brush one toilet or mop one floor or things like clean Roombas, that sort of thing. So the interesting thing is that often poor time management gets mistaken for depression. And when people are thinking about managing their emotions from day to day, they often overlook the idea that doing little tiny things every day, sure, you may not have a perfectly clean desk. I'm looking at mine. It's a nightmare. But if you take care of one object per day on your desk, that you dispose of it where it needs to be, or throw it out, or move it to its normal home, or arrange it better on your desk. If you do that one a day, after a month, you've got a clean desk. If you're me, most people after a week, but I'm special. So again, this is where people get depressed. They feel overwhelmed by clutter and disorganization. And you know what? Okay, if your house is really cluttered and you feel overwhelmed by it, you don't have to fix it all. But if you fix one thing every day, you'll just feel better. And sometimes for me in my cluttered home, it's I move one box out to the garage to be taken to donate, or I do the cobwebs. And sure, okay, my house is still cluttered and messy. But you know what? That's one more thing that I did. That when I feel overwhelmed by the clutter, I think of the one thing I'm doing right today. And that is going to affect your mood. And so when you start managing your time in just little increments here and there, whether it's fixing one thing on your desk per day or doing one cleaning task, or just making a list of all the things you'd like to do to repair around the house, for example, just doing one little thing, just organizing yourself in one small way, one little bit at a time, over time, if you can be patient with yourself, that actually reduces anxiety, it reduces stress, it reduces depression. So definitely a major part of emotional management strategies would be time management. On to the fluffy books. Oh goodness, they are kind of fluffy this week. Well, I'm still carrying Naruto on Netflix. I haven't watched it in a few weeks because it gets on my nerves. But again, I like its values, even though, the narrative style is kind of hard on me. I am still working my way through The Constant Rabbit, mostly because, as you will see in a minute, I have been watching videos. So I haven't had much reading time. However, when I didn't have The Constant Rabbit with me, I started working on When Blood Lies by C.S. Harris. This is the latest novel in the now quite lengthy Sebastian Sincere mystery series. These are historical mysteries set in the Regency era. I like them. I like the strong and compassionate couple at the center of them. I especially like Hero Sincere. I think she's a wonderfully drawn, powerful woman surviving in an age that allowed for that, fortunately. Now, I got to tell you, the Sebastian Sincere series, they do talk a little bit about class issues. I'm trying to think of this, if there was one book that they did try to take on the question of race. But I mean, you can hear this is fluffy. There's not anything here. When you just need narrative, when you're tired and you want something kind of unchallenging but intelligent, this is the series for you. But I'm not going to go into them in depth because there's not a lot of substance. They're just very well written. The characters are well drawn. Are we doing any social issues? No, not especially. But I have to get some relief from The Constant Rabbit by Jasper Fforde because it's really ripping into my soul with its discussion of the crazy of race politics. Something I really like, well, BritBox. BritBox came roaring back. It's a subscription video service from the UK, British television, as you can tell from the name. And I think it's $70 a year or $7 a month. I think that sounds right. And there's a few series I like on it. I really watch fluff. I have to admit, I don't go for anything too deep. And so they brought back Shakespeare and Hathaway, and they also brought back the 1950s Father Brown. And I really am enjoying them both. Shakespeare in Hathaway is just goofball pleasure. It's two PIs named, surprisingly, Luella Shakespeare and I forget, Frank Hathaway. And they're living in Stratford-on-Avon, and they're solving mysteries all around the Avon area. And it's just very beautiful. And it's a trip back to the countryside of my 20s when I used to hang out in Stratford. The plots are, some of them are better than others. They use the names of Shakespearean characters all over the place, which is a lot of fun. They don't follow Shakespeare at all. It's just, look, we're doing empty-headed murder mysteries in the countryside around Stratford-on-Avon. And I'm enjoying all those half-timber buildings, what can I tell you? But I think that's why I like them, that they're very light. After an intense day, they just kind of empty my brain out. No, they really don't have a lot of redeeming value. They're just light. It's just fluff. Father Brown is trying. Father Brown, of course, is based on the character from G.K. Chesterton, who I believe he was writing him to exist in the 20s, which was when Chesterton was writing. And they take the character, they put him in the 1950s, and in the beginning of the series, I think they're now on like season 9 of it. But in the first season, it's right after the Second World War. There are Polish refugees living in the area. I forget where they are. It might be Gloucestershire, down in the west of England. Anyway, they've got a Polish refugee camp. And so that lets them talk about social issues. There are questions about how do we talk to Germans now that the war is over. They're bringing up a lot of issues that are very interesting. They gradually just kill all that. And I gotta say, the series just gets fluffy. They bring in a new character. They have this very wealthy noblewoman, and she fades out, which is too bad. I liked her character a great deal. And they fade her out, and they bring in her wayward niece, Bunty. And Bunty is running around the countryside, apparently seducing men. And so Auntie, the rich lady who used to be in the series, has imprisoned her in the town of, I think it's Kembleford, where this takes place. And she's supposed to stay there because she's a bad girl and she's hiding from people in London. I don't know. Anyway, Bunty, of course, has her own beautiful little car, so why she can't leave at any time has always been a mystery. But that is the problem. The Father Browns are a little bit empty-headed. They're fun. They occasionally make a dip into trying to talk about issues of race and class. Look, if you're looking for an intelligent social discussion, this is not where I'd be going. But they do try. I'll give them credit. They really are making an effort, and it's kind of nice to see. But again, these are things I really like on BritBox, and what I'm really liking here is just a kind of empty-headed break from my day in an environment that I recognize from my youth. Put a lid on it. Well, piece of good news. We are still using our K-Cup, our Keurig, but we are not happy with the actual waste it makes. So we tried recyclable materials, and compostable cups and all that. And eventually we just stopped with the cups. And we now get instant coffee and use it in the K-Cups. And we used to put the coffee in these adorable little reusable plastic K-Cups, etc. Found out it's just instant coffee. You don't need to do that. So these days we put some instant coffee in a cup. We put it in the K-Cup machine, and we let the K-Cup machine make hot water for us and pour it in. And of course, as I was doing early on when I first bought the Keurig, you can make a lot of things that way. You can make hot soup, hot ramen. It's just an instant hot water machine. That's all a Keurig is. You don't need the K-Cups. However, we happened on a coffee we really like, Rapid Fire Keto Coffee. And that came in the actual plastic cups. And this drove us batty. And they kept saying, well, you can recycle the tops of it or some such thing. And I don't really think you can, frankly. Well, the good news, Rapid Fire Keto Coffee, which has been our vice, it's the place where we are polluting the environment. They put it out in an instant coffee format, just in a canister. So this month, excitement, we are using up the last, actually we've used them up, the last of the K-Cup pods for the Keurig. And in our subscription groceries, we are getting delivered the canisters of Rapid Fire Instant Keto Coffee. So we are now officially free of the pods that go with the Keurig. And it's a tough thing. I do love the Keurig. The instant water quality of it is really nice. It's a lot faster and it's less energy expensive than heating water on the stove for us here on our propane fuel system. However, you just got to get over the fact those pods are polluting, and there's not a happy solution to that. And we've tried everything. We got it down to just one thing we used every month. And we've been looking to get rid of them too, and we finally found the way. So if you're using a Keurig machine, keep in mind, all that's in a K-Cup pod is instant something. Instant cocoa, instant coffee. There's no magic there to running the water through it. And the easier way to make anything with a Keurig machine is just put instant coffee in your cup and let the hot water dissolve it when it drops in your cup. You don't have to use the pods at all. Why even have a Keurig machine? That's a really good question. My answer would be instant hot water is its advantage. In the meantime, I put up another recipe from LCHF Italian. I couldn't resist this. This is one of my favorite things that I had in Italy, and it's Bolzanina sauce. And this is, it's hard to describe it. It's a hard-boiled egg and lemon juice sauce where you mash everything together to get this creamy sauce, including olive oil and some mustard. And it's a nice recipe. It's there on the page. It's essentially you hard-boil 2 eggs, which takes 9 minutes from the moment the water is boiling. Then you take the yolks out, you blend them with the juice of half a lemon, and you mix in 50 grams of olive oil and a teaspoon of mustard. I don't know if she means powdered mustard there or if she means, Heinz golden mustard or whatever, French's golden mustard. At any rate, you add the egg whites, you dice those up from your boiled eggs, and you add them in, and then you can add salt and a little onion or chive. And this stuff is marvelous on green veg like steamed asparagus, but they use it in the image on roast beef, cold roast beef, and it looks fantastic. So there you are. And if you go to her YouTube channel, you can actually see her making it. So we're on to the blather. Well, the pup date. As you can imagine, it's been a very quiet week without our Eleanor. And to say we're missing her terribly is an understatement. So I have some puppy pictures of Captain, and Captain's really flowered in her own way without Eleanor. That Eleanor was not a fan of Captain. They had a lot of tension. Captain loved Eleanor, but Eleanor was always yappy and barky, and then they'd go out and play, and then Eleanor would kind of forget that she was supposed to be angry at Captain. But at any rate, Captain was under a lot of pressure from Eleanor, and we noticed it because she's very rarely chewing now, and it's very easy to stop her and hand her one of her chew toys, and she'll use that. Like, she knows she's not supposed to chew. She just seems to be forgetting sometimes. So all the chewing pretty much has stopped, and we can have her in the house, and we can trust her, and she wants to be with us. She is completely able to get on our high bed and on all the chairs, couches, love seats in the house, and she does. So if you're sitting on a sofa, you're going to have 70 pounds of Captain right next to you, cuddled up. She loves to cuddle. So I have some pictures of her with her favorite human. The way we got Captain, you may remember, we went to my friend Sheila's place down in Paris, and she had all these puppies. And I can't remember if she had 9 or 7 at the time, but it was like being in an ocean of puppies. They were milling all around us, and then the wave would sweep away from us, and there would be this one little puppy sitting at my husband's feet staring at his face. And then the wave would sweep back, and they were all black and roughly the same size, so you couldn't tell them apart. But when the wave would sweep away again, that same puppy was just sitting, staring thoughtfully into my husband's face. As you can guess, that was Captain. That my husband wanted a boy, and I think all of us suspected she wasn't. That is embarrassing, that as adults we weren't sure. But we would never have been able to leave her behind. She just wanted to sit and stare at him. And he is her preferred person. She loves me. She loves our son a little better than me. And she just adores the beloved spouse. She just wants to be with him. He is the light of her day. He is the sun in her sky. So meanwhile, it's true. I am daft about collies. I'm 61 years old. I really am not going to hang around waiting for a dream dog again. I can't seem to fill the Eleanor-shaped hole in my heart. The grieving has been really painful. Now, I do remember when Baron died of a heart attack at 9 years old, which may be what happened to Eleanor, who was, I kept saying she was 10, she's actually 9. I don't know. It's a kind of karmic thing between them. But I remember Baron's passing hurt me so much. And again, I was watching Eleanor blossom, that she really never liked Baron, and she was much happier she became boss dog, because Blankets will let anybody boss her around. And now Captain is boss dog, and Blankets is pleasantly tolerant of Captain. She does like her. Blankets is a dog person. She likes other dogs really a bit more than she likes humans, I think. Anyway, I couldn't take it. So I started making collie plans. The upshot, it looks like I'm going to Wichita, Kansas, probably in July. Quite when, I don't know. And I've ordered the puppy carrier, and we're not going to put her in cargo. We want her to go in the cabin with me, so first class is the best bet, because they'll let you do just about anything in first class, but she should still fit under a seat at that age. I'm looking at golden collie puppies if I can find one. And for the time being, I'm calling the puppy Queenie, because I keep thinking that Eleanor was the queen of the place, and I didn't know it until the very end. And I feel like there's nobody on the throne around here. And so Queenie is coming, and the plan is Wichita. I bought plane tickets. The first day they got relatively inexpensive, so it had to be July. They were all exchangeable. So from this point on, I just pay them off, and really I can pretty much pick the day I want to go. If we have to add extra, we add extra. So I have first class tickets to Wichita through DFW and back, and that seems to be happening in July, we think. Meanwhile, in the Little Stuff Counts department, finally we got the windshield on Bluebird, my husband's Prius, repaired, and life is just better. That was a big cost that had to be managed. It was a chip that went south, and the insurance probably wasn't going to go for it since it was cheaper than our deductible. So we got that done. And so things are going very nicely around here. It's just painfully quiet without our big shaggy Eleanor. Oh, boy, that hurts to even say. And Minerva gets the last word. Well, there is a picture of Minerva staring placidly out her window, or in her mind, her bird television, out towards the front of the house. And she is thinking how peaceful and quiet it is, not realizing that there is going to be another dog. So we're all in this sort of quiet space between events, and things are kind of calm around the farm right now. And frankly, that's a really, really nice change. So, okay, everybody, I think that's all I have to say this week. Stay tuned for more exciting adventures. Seriously, you know you're dull when the event of your week is getting a new windshield on the car. It's cool, though. They come right to your driveway and just put it in, sitting in your driveway. So that was about as easy as that could be. So it's kind of a cool thing. But in the meantime, please remember, we are still in a pandemic. I know nobody's wearing masks, but please try to think about, if you're in close quarters especially, there are immune-compromised people who really do need to get out of the house for their mental health. And there are little kids who really do need to get out of the house for their socialization and mental health. So please try to be good about the masks and be conscious of those people who still have a need to be protected from COVID. And in the meantime, the whole purpose of all of this is for everybody to stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.